You want to go from band 6 to band 8, perhaps even band 9, but don't know how? Well, don't worry, I'm here for you. My name is Asmita, your IELTS mentor here at Vedantu, and today I'm going to tell you how you can up your IELTS game, and I'm going to take a little bit of help from friends. No, not your friends, not my friends either, they're not very helpful. I'm gonna use the friends. So I know a lot of you have already watched this show. If you haven't, it's a classic, it's a fun watch to unwind, and it'll give you a lot to learn keeping IELTS in mind. So just how Americans talk, the kind of phrases, expressions they use, all of that. So this is definitely a show you can watch as part of your IELTS preparation. It can also give you insights into Britishers, Ross's ex-wife, or even Australians for that matter, with Joey's ex-girlfriend. Yeah. Anyway, if you haven't watched the show, do watch it. Now, Joey doesn't share food, yes, but we here share a lot of important information that you need to make your study abroad dreams come true. So why aren't you subscribed yet? Come on, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Telegram, and help your friends out too, okay? All right, so I'm going to tell you things that you need to look out for if you want to score a high band in IELTS. Starting with this little episode right here when Joey goes out of his way to sound intelligent, and he's writing a letter and he changes every word in his letter into a more complicated word by taking the help of a thesaurus. Okay, so what he wanted to say was, oh, they are warm, nice people with big hearts. And what he ended up with was, and that became, they are humid, prepossessing Homo sapiens with full-sized aortic pumps. Doesn't make any sense, right? So number one thing you need to do is, well, avoid sounding like a textbook. Now, we've talked about this before, and a lot of English exposure that you have is from academic texts, right? Because we've studied mostly in English medium schools. So the kind of English that we've read is always formal, it's always academic, it's not normal, it's not conversational. And what IELTS is looking for is how well you can communicate in English, in your day-to-day life. So because you're emigrating to an English-speaking country or going there to study, you need to be able to hold conversations with people there, get your point across. So it's easy for you, it's easy for them, right? So IELTS is about normal conversational English, not very academic formal English. So avoid sounding the way, I don't want to stereotype, but avoid sounding the way old Indian uncles do, if you know what I'm saying. Instead of saying the precipitation was intense, which no one talks like that, just say it's raining heavily or it was raining heavily, I completely agree with the aforementioned statement. Completely okay in a formal exchange, but you can just say, yeah, I'm right with you, or I totally agree, I completely agree, that's more than enough. I reside in New Delhi, I live in New Delhi, I'm from New Delhi, that should do the trick, right? So avoid sounding like a textbook. Now, do you remember when Joey was trying to learn French and everything he said was essentially gibberish, like je de flou flee, and Phoebe got really mad at the end, and the iconic "you're not speaking French" dialogue she had, right? So don't sound like Joey when you're trying to speak English. And this happens to a lot of people. Even if they are very fluent, if they have a good grasp of the language, they know what they're saying. Sometimes, in order to impress the examiner, or simply because they're anxious or nervous, they start speaking too fast. And when you speak too fast, you sound like Joey speaking French. Don't do that. Again, remember the intent, the point of the exam. It's to test whether or not you can have normal day-to-day conversations. So how do you talk with your friends when you want to gossip, when you want to rant about something, when you're just talking to a friend over coffee? How do you communicate? That's the kind of body language, that's the kind of vocabulary you need to have. Now, we'll talk more about vocabulary later and in tomorrow's video as well. But just remember that you're not trying to impress, you are trying to express. So focus more on the expression than trying to make an impression, okay? Speaking too fast. Now, if you have a cue card topic which says describe a hobby you enjoy doing in your free time, you come up with this amazing answer in a minute, the minute that you get to think about what you're going to say. And you have all these thoughts, you sort of figured them out in your head, and you're ready to go. And you might be really happy with yourself, like, hey, look, I've got this. You know, I'm going to ace my speaking test. And then you start speaking, and it goes kind of like, one hobby I really enjoy is baking. I started doing it during the lockdown, and now it's something I look forward to every weekend. It helps me relax, especially after a long week of classes or work. I usually, try simple recipes like banana bread or cupcakes, and you get the gist. You're not supposed to speak too fast. That doesn't prove that you are fluent in English. You're supposed to speak effectively. Don't bore the person listening to you, but be clear. Take your time. When you speak normally, you think about what you're going to say next, right? You hear the way I'm talking right now. I don't have a script in hand. I'm not reading out of a teleprompter. So I'm going to take a second to think about what I want to say next. You can do that too, and that's completely fine. That's normal, and you're supposed to sound normal, not robotic. Another thing that happens when you speak too fast is that the examiner might think you've memorized what you're going to say. So obviously there are limited cue card topics, right? And if you practice enough, or if you've taken the IELTS enough times, you can kind of start predicting what kind of prompts you're going to get on your cue card. So the examiner might think, okay, this person has just memorized random answers for all cue card topics, and you're going to get a low band, okay? So just take your time, communicate like you would. You don't have to be genuine. It's not like whatever you're saying has to be 100% true. You can say whatever is easier for you to say. For example, this is important. There is a cue card topic that often comes up, which is describe a documentary that you recently watched. And you might be like, I don't watch documentaries. What's that? That's okay. You might not have watched a documentary recently. That's fine. Make one up. You don't have to be genuine in your answers, although being genuine definitely helps you express yourself better. So it's always a good thing to be honest about what you're saying. But in case you're stuck in a position where, you haven't seen a documentary, you haven't read a book in a long time, or you don't have an opinion about something, you can make it up. Okay, you don't have to. That's not where you lose points. That, oh no, this person hasn't watched a documentary. What kind of, that's not going to happen. All you need to do is communicate effectively. Take your time. One hobby I really enjoy is baking. I started doing it during the lockdown, and now it's something I look forward to every weekend. It helps me relax, especially after a long week of classes or work. I usually try simple recipes like banana bread or cupcakes, and sometimes I experiment a bit with new ingredients. What I love most is the smell of fresh bread in the oven. And at this moment, being genuine, like I said, helps because you're imagining the smell of fresh bread in the oven, and that makes you happy, and that sort of reflects in the way you talk, in your tone, right, in your inflection. So that's always a plus. Here we are. It just makes the whole house feel warm and cozy. Plus, it's fun to share what I bake with my friends and family. They are always happy to be my taste testers. Okay? So slowly, calmly, that's the way you should be talking in your speaking test. Okay, could this be any more confusing? We all miss Matthew Perry, don't we? Now, what I'm going to talk about next is complex sentences. Should you be using complex sentences, which are long sentences where you have conjunctions, where you have a dependent clause with an independent clause, these long sentences, should you be using those in your IELTS test? Absolutely. But you have to make sure you're using them correctly. Because if you use them incorrectly, you lose points in your grammatical accuracy. Okay, so yes, using complex sentences is great. It shows your hold over the English language. But if you make it confusing, that's a no-go. Okay, so use complex sentences, but make sure they are used right. For example, here we have a sentence. Although it was raining, but I went to the market. This is a complex sentence worded incorrectly. You have a dependent clause, you have an independent clause, but that's not obvious here because somehow we ended up with but which is a coordinating conjunction here. So what it should have been was, although it was raining, I went to the market, right? Or I like reading books which gives knowledge and information. Now, first of all, the SVC here is wrong. Subject verb agreement is wrong. Secondly, what is this which referring to? Why is there all this information here? Instead, we can keep it a little simple. I like reading books that give me a lot of information, or that give me information about whatever topic it is that you're interested in, right? And then here, this is an example of a run-on sentence. What is a run-on sentence? A sentence that's not punctuated properly, that doesn't have the right conjunctions, and it just goes on and on and on and on. You will lose marks for this in your writing section. I want to study abroad. I need to get a good IELTS score. This should technically be two different sentences, but here it's just one run-on sentence. So make sure you punctuate properly. If you want this to be one sentence, you can say, I want to study abroad, comma, so I need to get a good IELTS score. All right, so just watch out for these little things. Yes, you can make a good impression with complex sentences, but you need to make sure you're doing it right. Okay, now, Vikram, what? That's a real name. This is when Ross pretended to be Vikram, an Indian kite designer with a very stereotypical Indian accent, and he was pretending to be Phoebe's fake ex-boyfriend, right? So what I'm trying to tell you here is, yes, we've had enough of the West stereotyping Indians. We've had enough of them making stupid racist jokes for gags. But one thing we need to keep in mind is that we're not going there as flag bearers of our Indianism. We are going there as students who want to study, want to make a bright future for themselves. We're going there because it's their university that's going to give us all of that, right? So nothing wrong with being proud of your culture. We as Indians have a lot to be proud about, but always keep in mind that you are going to their country. They're not coming to your country. When foreigners come to India, we expect them, or we get happy when they dress in our ethnic wear, when they try to say namaste and all of that. We find that endearing, we find that cute, because they're making an effort to learn about our country, our culture, because they're coming here. So same way, because we are going to a different country, we need to learn about their culture. And so sounding too Indian or using Indianized English is a no-go. As much as I like Indianized English, I think it really works for us Indians, the way we communicate. It's not a global phenomenon yet. Can we make it a global phenomenon? Maybe, hopefully someday. But right now, these phrases kind of exist only in our subcontinent. They haven't really traveled far and wide. So chances are people are not going to understand what you're saying. So stick to how the natives talk, as opposed to trying to impose your Indian English on them. For example, kindly do the needful is something we say a lot, but it doesn't really make much sense. It's also way too formal for no reason. So please do what's necessary. Could work better than kindly do the needful. Or he's my real brother. Now, what's a fake brother? What do you mean by fake brother? Why do you have to specify he's real? Now, we as Indians know that this means that he's my actual brother, as in like we have the same parents. But the word brother essentially inherently means that. People in the West don't call their cousins their brothers, right? They just call them cousins. So, I think this comes from the whole joint family culture that we have of living together and being very close to our chacha, taya's kids and all of that. But see, don't carry these little cultural implications in your language, because it's just not going to make sense to the other person. So here, instead of saying he's my real brother, we can just say he is my brother. That should suffice. I have a doubt. What's wrong with this? Well, the word doubt, the way we're using it here, the way we use it in class, means I have a question, right? But in native English-speaking countries, You just say, I have a question. Because the word doubt means something else. It's like, I doubt your abilities. That means I'm not certain about your abilities, right? Or I am apprehensive about something. That's the meaning of doubt. So it's used in a different way. And it's just in Indian English where we use doubt as a synonym of question, as in, I don't get this, I have a question about this, can you please clear my doubt? So that's just an Indian English thing. So don't say that when, I mean, I don't know where you would have to possibly say it in your IELTS, but just keep that in mind. Don't sound too Indian in your English, okay? Nothing racist going on here. Finally, the whole pivot episode. Iconic scene always cracks me up. What happens here is that they're trying to get a sofa, a couch up the stairway, and it's too big and they get stuck because they don't know how to maneuver it. So, what I'm trying to say here is so that you don't have to yell pivot, pivot in your head while taking the test, know what you're signing up for. Okay, you are already scared, you're already anxious on test day, you already have this adrenaline rush. Okay, you don't want to spend extra time figuring out what the test is going to be like. You can just do that way well in advance. Okay, you should know your 4 sections, you should know their duration, you should know the kind of questions that are going to be asked so that you don't have to waste time reading, rereading, or listening to instructions. You already know what's going to happen and you can just sit and mentally prepare yourself for that. Okay, so this is very important. Take enough mock tests, know exactly what's going to be on the IELTS test so that you have no surprises that you were not prepared for. Very, very important. All right. And that brings us to the end of today's session. Hope you found that helpful. If you still haven't filled out the counseling form, what are you waiting for? Fill out the counseling form. Do you not want expert guidance? Do you not want help? Do you just want your life to be difficult for no reason? I mean, that's on you, but the link is in the description. Please do fill it out. And just a little reminder for you to subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends if you found it helpful. Like it if you liked it, and follow us on Telegram. I will see you again next time. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.